Following each other on social media super early on in the dating process seems harmless, but what if I told you it's actually adding to your anxiety? In this episode, we're getting into how to approach social media in early dating. Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia, I'm a dating coach, and I'm sharing no nonsense advice for navigating modern dating with confidence and ease, whether you've been on dozens of dates or you're just getting started. I believe dating can be fun. So let's jump right in. I wanted to dedicate an entire episode to this topic because no matter how much of a social media person you are, it does factor into our dating lives one way or another. If you're listening to this podcast, it's likely you use some form of social media, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X, or Snap. And even if you don't, some of the people you date likely do. It's pretty rare in 2024 that someone would have zero internet presence anyway. So let's talk about it. Today's episode is really going to focus on issues that people who use social media face, but even if you don't use it, you're going to learn something. And at the end, I'm going to answer two dating dilemmas and I have some personal updates for you as well. So stick around. When you first meet someone, when do you check their social media? How long into chatting with them do you Google them? And how far do you go? Do you care if people are doing this to you as well? And when do you actually follow each other? I think when you first meet someone online or in real life, it's appropriate to Google them, right? To search them to see what they're up to online. From a safety standpoint, from a curiosity standpoint, it's fine to do, but we need to know where the line is because you might learn some things about someone before they have a chance to tell you the full story, or you might learn something about them that's a yellow flag and you'll make judgments before you even get a real first impression. Or you might learn something that's absolutely a deal breaker, like they're actually married with children. So, yes, Googling someone before a first date is fine to do, especially if you're concerned for your safety or if you've been burned in the past. It makes sense, but there is a line. You're probably going to find this crazy, but I rarely Googled anyone before meeting them for dates. The only times I Googled them was when they said they were a CEO or founder or entrepreneur because I wanted to learn more about their company or whatever. But other than that, I didn't even look up their Instagrams. And looking back, I probably could have done more research on who I dated, but I also didn't walk away from any dates thinking I should have Googled them before. And maybe I just got lucky. I really didn't want people to Google me before meeting me. And this is how I felt before I started dating intentionally, the Instagram and the podcast. I didn't want people to get a first impression of me based on my internet presence, which at the time was mostly food stuff, right? I had a social media account with nearly 500,000 followers and all of these videos of me cooking, which is just different from the version of me that they would get on a date. Of course, some people Googled me even if I didn't tell them the name of my company. It was pretty easy to find. Two guys on two separate occasions actually bought my cookbook before our first date, and I found that a little weird. So, my advice here is yes, Google your dates if you feel inclined to, but don't spend hours stalking them, please. Like, if you've hit their 2014 filtered Instagram photos, you've probably gone way too far. Let's talk about trading social media information early on. Sometimes when you're on the apps, people will ask you for your Instagram or Snapchat handle or something. And I'm not saying this is always the case, but sometimes people do this because they've been catfished in the past and they want to see more photos of you to make sure you actually look like your profile photos. And sometimes people do this because they don't want to text, but will DM you on these platforms, which to me is a little sketchy, like they're hiding something. Either way, we don't have to spend time analyzing why they're doing it. You don't have to give your social media info if they ask. I advise not doing it anyway. If you think they're concerned about what you look like and making sure that you're not catfishing them, you can offer a FaceTime call instead. Or you can say, I don't connect with people on social media until I've gotten to know them more. This is very fair and very reasonable. If they get upset when you say you don't want to give it out, good. They're showing you their level of maturity early on. So, no one is entitled to be connected to you on social media from the jump. And following each other too early on social media can absolutely sabotage a connection. Here's a scenario for you. Let's say you've gone on 2 or 3 dates with someone you like. The dates have been fun, their texting has been flirty and consistent, so you decide you're going to follow them on Instagram and they follow you back. Do you know what happens next? I'll tell you. And what happens next is why I believe it's best to wait to follow each other until you're officially in a relationship. So time goes by and you realize their texts get a little slower. They haven't asked you for another date. And then one day you're waiting for a text back from them. So you decide to see what they've been up to on Instagram. And you see that they watched a story you posted an hour ago, but they haven't responded to your text, which you sent 4 hours ago. So you think, Wow, they're clearly on their phone. Why aren't they replying to my text? And your anxiety skyrockets. Exact situation could play out on a variety of social media platforms. I've also heard people talk about this on WhatsApp because you can see when someone's been online, but they're not responding to your text. It'll drive anyone crazy. The point I'm trying to make here is that following each other on social media before you're official only adds fuel to your anxiety. There is no reason to be keeping tabs on someone you barely know. And if you mostly use social media to connect with friends, there's no reason they need to be seeing what you're up to either. They're a stranger. Another issue I've experienced personally when I've made the same mistake of romanticizing their social media photos. Like I used to look at their pictures over and over on their Instagram account and just kind of let my brain fill in all the gaps. Like, oh, there's a photo of him and his mom. He must be so close to his family. Or, oh, wow, look at him on this amazing hike. He must be in amazing shape. But as we know, social media is never fully accurate. We choose how we want people to see us online. Social media, especially Instagram, is a highlight reel. This can really skew our perspective of someone when trying to get to know them in real life. And I want to remind you, it's okay to look at someone's Instagram profile or check out their online presence in early dating, just in case you come across a huge red flag like they follow thousands of OnlyFans models, which, by the way, to the guys listening, this is something that women do look at, and typically we are turned off by it. A lot of people, including me, look at who their dates are following. Like, I 10,000% looked at who Johnny follows at some point, but I think we were already in a relationship by then. Real quick, before we go on, I just want to remind you that you can watch these episodes on YouTube. The link to my YouTube channel is in the show notes. You can also just Google Dating Intentionally YouTube and you will find me. I can't wait to see you there. Please hit subscribe while you're there. Also, if we're not already connected on Instagram, speaking of social media, you can find me on Instagram at dating.intentionally. I love hearing from you. Okay, so let's say you've already kind of made this mistake and you're following each other, but you're not in a relationship yet. I suggest muting their posts and stories. Don't let yourself know what they're up to all the time. And you can change your settings on Instagram so that they don't see your stories either without unfollowing or blocking them. And this advice applies to people you're still actively dating. But let's just say you're no longer dating and you're still following each other on social media. I want you to open Instagram right now or wherever you're following them and unfollow them. Literally pause this podcast if you need to. Just do it right now. I'll wait. Okay, because there is no reason to follow a random person you went out with twice on social media. They're not your friend. They're not posting content that's useful or interesting, probably. And there's just no reason to keep tabs on them. Like, I'll get DMs sometimes from daters who will say, "Why do they always find a partner after me when they told me they weren't ready?" And my first thought is, how and why do you know that they found someone? My assumption, which maybe I'm wrong, is social media. And I realize that might not be the case every time. My point is, you shouldn't know if they got into a relationship after dating you and telling you they didn't want a relationship. It doesn't do anything positive for you, it only lets you build on this negative narrative that you're not dateable and that you're not going to find someone, which is just a story. It's not a fact. Basically, social media allows us to have all this information that supports certain narratives, usually ones that don't serve us, especially if we've been ghosted. It's so hurtful to see the person who ghosted you posting on social media. Why put ourselves through that? Just unfollow them. So if you're prone to anxiety, if you lean anxiously attached, moral of the story is don't follow your crush or someone you're newly dating until you're committed or at least exclusively dating. Trust me, it is just more peaceful this way. I want to talk a little bit more about Instagram stories because there are a lot of ways to show interest in dating, but you know what's not really one of them? Someone watching or liking your Instagram stories. I need you to know that someone watching your stories does not mean they're interested. Do you know how many times I leave my phone open on stories accidentally and they're just kind of going through and I'm not even watching? Or people just like mindlessly tap through, or you accidentally click on it and open it. It doesn't mean anything. It's the lowest effort thing ever. And I honestly wouldn't even call it effort or interest. So don't let your brain tell you that they're the love of your life because they watch your Instagram story. Even if they heart one of your stories, we just can't look at that and say they're putting in effort. Effort is making plans with you and showing up to those plans. Effort is spending time with you, not liking one of your stories when they're probably on the toilet or rotting on their couch. I'm also going to touch on a few other social media related scenarios here. When you break up with someone, whether you've seen them for 2 weeks or 2 years, you unfollow them or at the very least, mute them, right? It's that simple. You might find this hard to do, but I'm telling you right now, it's not rude to unfollow people who are not good for your mental health. And Nothing about following your ex or someone you used to date on social media is good for your mental health when you're still getting over it. If it's been years and you're way over it, fine. If you see their photos and feel nothing, cool, go for it. But if seeing their photos and knowing what's going on in their life would cause you pain or anxiety, just don't. I take this advice too. I'm 3 years out of my last relationship and I have no idea what my ex is up to, and I don't want to know. Another scenario that comes up a lot for women dating men is when you see that they follow a lot of models, and OnlyFans girls, basically women they don't know who are posting themselves in bikinis and like other thirst trap type pictures. If this is a deal breaker for you, I get it. It's not a good look, and it's not like you can really address that in early dating. You can say to someone like, "Hey, I notice you follow a lot of models on Instagram," and call them out, but it's also not really your place to tell them who to follow and who to not follow, like, especially when you're just getting to know them. Truthfully, I've never found myself in this situation. The guys I dated tended to just not be big social media users, but I thought really hard about it, and going off my gut, I think if I just started dating someone and I saw that they follow hundreds of models on Instagram, like, they're following more models than, like, their friends, like, the ratio is off, I probably would stop dating them. It's just a huge turnoff to me. That being said, if they're only following, like, a couple hot girls on Instagram that they didn't know, fine. To me, it's more about that ratio. So, again, guys, if you're listening to this and you didn't know this was a thing, it's a thing. I think I answer a question about it every single week. And I think everyone's entitled to their own approach to that. But I'm just sharing mine. And that is, I probably wouldn't date someone who is following hundreds of models. All right. The last scenario that I wanted to touch on here is hard launching someone on social media. So that means that they're publicly posting a photo of you together and it's like, we are publicly now a couple, right? I recommend discussing this when you become official with someone. Like, don't make any assumptions because if it's important to you that your partner is publicly showing you off on their social media account, make that known because they might not know that you care. For what it's worth, I'm engaged and my fiance has never posted a picture of me on his Instagram feed. I don't care. It's just really not something I care about. Maybe he'll hard launch me after we get married. So, but if you do care about this, definitely bring it up. Don't make assumptions, talk about it. And just a general note on social media and dating, like with everything else, have these discussions, talk about your social media habits with the person you're dating as a topic. Talk about your feelings around social media. Lead with curiosity and always seek to gain a deeper understanding instead of creating stories in your head. By the way, if you are enjoying these episodes, if they're helping you, you can help me by leaving a review on Apple. So if you're an iPhone user, you can open up the Apple Podcast app on your phone. You can find my podcast, Dating Intentionally. Scroll to the bottom of the page, and there is an area where you can leave 5 stars or a review. Anything helps. I really appreciate it. All right, let's get into some dating dilemmas. If you want to leave a dating dilemma, you can do so in the show notes. There's a link there to a form you could submit anonymously. And I love when you submit because when you share your issues and I read them on the podcast, you help other people feel less alone in their issues. So thank you for your vulnerability and thank you for sharing. Here's the first one. Despite listening to your advice, I, 31 female, am still unsure about the one thing you constantly mention on your podcast and in interviews. In theory, by the third date, I should be deciding whether there's attraction. However, with the last 2 men I dated, it took me more than 5 to 7 dates to find that attraction, but I did end up becoming very physically attracted to them as I got to know them better. So now, as I date, I'm unsure as to whether to cut a connection off by the third date if I don't feel attraction, or to wait and see if the attraction grows as I get to know them. I don't want to waste my time or theirs, but I don't want to kill potential either. A slow and steady dater. I want to say it's so great you know yourself, right? You are figuring out what works for you, and that is the entire point of dating. It's this exploration and figuring out for yourself. I'm glad you're using my advice as a jumping off point, but my advice is not the law, it's not the rule. It's kind of just like a general guideline, and if you are feeling attraction by 5 to 7 dates, that's maybe your benchmark instead of 3 dates. You know what I mean? Like maybe you know for yourself you've got to give it 5 to 7 dates instead of three because three isn't enough. And that's totally fine. Like, we're not all the same. Some people feel attraction right away. They know right away if they're attracted to someone or not. And for some people, it takes more time. There is no rule. So I suggest following what you know is better for you, is just giving it a few more dates. As long as you are enjoying their company, having a good time, you're still curious about them, and you haven't run into any deal breakers, keep dating them. You're not wasting their time, right? Nothing in dating is a waste of time. The only waste of time is when you know you don't like them and you keep dating them. But if you're not sure yet, you are allowed to keep dating them. And I know that makes some of us feel guilty, but isn't it better to give someone a real shot than cut it off too early, which is kind of what your point is here. So I think it's all good. You're doing it right. You're doing great. Keep giving it 5 to 7 dates if that's what's working for you. Here is the next one. I, 38 male, am dating and am encountering women who say they want a long term relationship but don't prioritize dating. When I ask them their availability for a date, they proceed to tell me how full their calendar is. Occasionally, I'll get a brief date 1 night a week or less, but they still want to text me on a daily basis. It doesn't feel like they're really ready for commitment and that they don't have time for a relationship. Or maybe they just want a male friend. Should I try to date women that are less busy? What is your recommendation? A recovering people pleaser. I love this question. Thank you for submitting it. And I think it's really interesting to hear from the other side what it's like to date someone with a really packed schedule and how frustrating it can be. And I do believe that your calendar does reflect your priorities, right? So if you are listening, you're like, I really want to date, but you have no room in your calendar for dating, you're not prioritizing dating. So, to a recovering people pleaser, should you try to date women that are less busy? I say yes. You know, it's hard to know how busy someone is until you like start talking to them and start trying to plan a date. I think that this is something that might be revealed to you when you are trying to plan date 2, right? It's hard to know if someone's too busy to date by date 1, but if you start talking to someone and you are struggling to lock down the first date, that's probably a sign they're too busy. If planning the first date is easy and then planning the second date is tough, that's all probably another sign they're too busy. And I think that it's okay to have these conversations like, "Okay, I really wanna see you again, but it seems like your schedule is really packed. What does work for you?" And basically making plans should not be like doing surgery. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be that hard. So when you find someone who it's easy to make plans with, that's your big green flag. And keep looking for that. I agree. I think that dating people who only have time to see you once a month is probably not worth it if you're looking to settle down sooner and you're looking to get into a relationship sooner. And that's okay. It's kind of an incompatibility thing. It's not like a you're doing something wrong thing. So keep going. You know what you're looking for now. That's what you've gotten from this experience so far. If you're still here, I have some personal updates for you. So thank you for listening. Our wedding is less than 3 months away, and that is crazy to me. Just some wedding updates. My dress is finished, which is super exciting. Once again, thank you so much for submitting your dating dilemmas. You can submit yours below in the show notes. There's a little dating dilemma link for you. Okay, I want to get into some personal updates. I got some wedding updates. The wedding is in less than 3 months, which is crazy. Like, I feel like we've done a lot, but also there's like a lot left to do. My dress is finished. I finally found a reception dress that I actually love. I tried on more like party dresses than wedding gowns. That was really difficult. There's so many white dresses that are like different vibes, whereas like wedding gowns, it's kind of like it's a wedding vibe, right? I finally found a hair and makeup artist through my Instagram community. So thank you for that. We're picking up our wedding ring soon, and our prenup is still in progress. Getting super excited for the honeymoon. Like, now we can finally look at restaurants and when we want to get spa treatments and like those little details on our honeymoon. So all the big stuff is booked, right? We're using a travel agent, so the big stuff is all done. But now we can like get into the details, and I am shredding for the wedding. So if you don't want to hear body talk, just skip for the next minute or two. I really love having a fitness goal. I've always loved it. I've been getting really into weightlifting, walking. I bought a walking pad because my trainer is like, you need to get at least 7,500 steps a day, which is actually really hard when living in the Bay Area. Like, I don't live in a walkable area at all, and it's hot. So I've got this walking pad now. It's been interesting. I really am enjoying the challenge of getting to a certain point with my body, though I will say I would be really happy getting married in the body I have today. I would have been happy getting married in the body I had in January. Like, this is really just for fun for me, and I'm not putting a lot of pressure on myself. Okay, other updates. I want to talk about some personal breakthroughs I've had in my relationship recently. So, This may or may not be a surprise to you, but I can be really hard on myself. I can be very critical. I kind of like punish myself when I screw up. And I think this is just from how I grew up, like with I was grounded like every week growing up. And so now as an adult, what that has translated to is if I make a mistake, I freak out. Like I fully freak out. So a couple weeks ago, I made a mistake that kind of affected Johnny. And I remember I called him right away when I realized this mistake, and he was hanging out with his friends, and I called him and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" I'm like, "Hey, can you step outside?" I like told him what happened, expecting him to just I was like bracing myself for him to yell at me, which he has never done. He has never raised his voice at me. But that's what my body was expecting that. And he was just like, "Okay, just here, this is what you do to fix it. Just fix it." And it was like a major click moment for me. Just like, "Oh, I don't have to punish myself. I don't have to brace myself for anger. I don't have to just like beat myself up for this mistake. I can just fix it and move on." And I know that sounds so simple and obvious, but when something's been super ingrained in your brain, it's just doing anything different feels so foreign. And it's just wild to me how being in this relationship is literally changing my brain chemistry, or just like the way my brain is wired. And it's easier to be nicer to myself because the person I am emotionally attached to is nice to me. It's wild. And I'm sharing this because it's like these are the things I didn't expect to happen when I got into this relationship with someone who is more emotionally secure. And it's just, I'm sharing this so that it's an example of, like, things that could happen when you're in a relationship with someone and the relationship is healthy. Like, it's crazy how much of this relationship is supporting my mental health, where in my past relationships, they damaged my mental health, and that is just one of the biggest green flags ever. Another couple other realizations I've been having recently, I still am working on speaking up for my needs, right? So, for example, a couple weeks ago, Johnny got invited to do this activity with his friends, and I was invited too, but I really didn't want to go. It involved basically drinking all day. And I'm like, nah, that's just not for me. So, he was trying to go, and we had dinner reservations for that night. And I felt really weird doing this, but I was like, okay, I really don't wanna skip this dinner reservation. I want him to go hang out with his friends, obviously, but I don't wanna skip this reservation. So I called him. I'm like, "Hey, you know what? Like, I really would rather you not skip this reservation. I wanna have dinner with you. I made this reservation last week. Like, it's important to have date night." And he was like, "Yeah, of course." And he made it work so that he could be with his friends, and we didn't have to cancel our reservation. And again, sounds so obvious, sounds so easy, but this was a big step for me. Like, I think in the past, I would have just been like, yeah, like, do whatever you want, and then quietly resented my partner for doing something that I didn't want them to do, basically. Like, when I could have just spoken up and be like, "Hey, let's go to dinner like we planned because it's important to me." And that was also a really big moment. Just again, like repeating the process of asking for your needs to be met, asking for what you want, and letting your partner be like, "Yeah, of course," and giving them the opportunity to say yes and meet you where you're at. The last thing I wanted to share is that we've been living together for 1 year. It's been a whole year. This would have been the deadline for him to propose. I think it's amazing. A year in, we are really working out a lot of the kinks. We're in a routine that is so solid right now. I'm loving it. Like, we both do a lot of stuff around the house. We take care of each other. We're aware of each other. Like, last night I was cracking up because Johnny has this routine of like collecting all the things I scatter around the apartment and putting them away, which sounds horrible. It's like I should just do that, but I don't know, I'm kind of like I'm messy, right? I have stuff everywhere. And that was just so nice. It was just such a nice moment of like, "Oh, you're like putting things you're just making sure I have my water bottle and making sure that I have, my wallet is in the right place. So I don't have to like scurry around looking for my wallet," which is like a daily occurrence. Yeah, I don't know, just all these little things really add up. I think I'm finally really starting to understand what people say when they mean it's the little things that make each other feel loved, and not these like big grand gestures all the time. So, yeah, again, all these things are just validating the choice I made to be with this guy that I wasn't sure about at the beginning, was kind of lukewarm on, and now it's just truly the best thing. And I hope that you find that too. And again, I'm sharing this just to show like real life examples of what a healthy relationship could be. We're not perfect. We fight, okay? there are times where we fight. I just want to also remind you, like, we're not perfect, but things are good. All right, that's my time. I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting me. I hope this episode helped you kind of gain clarity around social media and dating. And don't forget, you are doing great. I'd love it if you share this episode with someone who is navigating dating and might need a little confidence boost or some tough love. If any of these episodes have helped you in your journey, you can help me by leaving a stunning review on Apple or 5 stars on Spotify. I'd really appreciate it. Once again, I'm Talia. This has been Dating Intentionally, and I'll see you on Friday.